Goats! I love goats, you love goats, we all love goats. Everyone has a favourite goat, whether it's big goats or perhaps pygmy goats, alpine goats, Argentata dilectus, or maybe you like small goats. What is the oldest goat in the UK? This is a question that has plagued scientists for decades. This is the quest for the oldest goat. Wait. We know what the oldest goat is. There are tons of goats. Goats have been a staple of British wildlife for thousands of years, but surprisingly there is no species of goat that is actually native to the United Kingdom. Like I said, goats have been around for thousands of years. How many thousands? 5,000. That's a lot of thousands. Throughout those thousands of years, goats have undergone a process called naturalisation. This occurs when foreign animals establish natural and self-sustaining herds in a new habitat, and it can take hundreds or even thousands of years to occur. It's generally accepted by biologists that the first goats were brought over from Persia by Neolithic humans around the year 3000 BC, back when there was a massive bridge from England to continental Europe. This goat is now known as the British primitive goat. The name British primitive goat inspires a lot of debate as to whether it refers to one single breed of goat or a collection of closely related breeds. This debate could have been easily prevented if Neolithic humans just learned to keep better records. But I suppose I want never gets. There are poorly organised historical records of Old English landrace, Scottish landrace, Welsh landrace, Irish landrace, British landrace, and Old British goats. However, since they are all described as being incredibly similar, we can assume it's all descriptions of the same landrace breed. It's hard to appreciate how old these goats really are, and as a result, why we have so little information on them. So let me try and put it into perspective for you. These goats were kept by the builders of Stonehenge. Yes, I'm talking about that Stonehenge. The massive circle of rocks that's been around even since before the birth of David Attenborough. That's Stonehenge. However, over time, agricultural practices changed, and goats kind of went out of fashion and were replaced with newer, more trendy animals such as the cow.
Hey there, brah. I'm the cow.
And by the time of the Victorian goat revival in the 1870s, British primitives just didn't meet the bougie standards of working class farmers because they were too small or too hairy or their horns were too inconvenient. And coincidentally, these are all reasons why I was fired from my last job. Farmers instead opted for new breeds that were larger and yielded more product, and imported breeds from India, Switzerland and the Middle East, which later established themselves as Anglo-Nubians, British Toggenburgs, British Saanens and British Alpines. And as a result of the import of these more desirable breeds, most domesticated British primitives died out in the late 1800s, with the last true domestic British primitive goats dying in 1953, which left the feral herds established by the escapees as the only survivors of this catastrophic shift in goat farming culture. To this day, the descendants of those escapees have a national population of around 1,200. And as it is human actions that led to the creation and the later decline of this breed, I believe it's also a human responsibility to conserve them. One crucial step in British primitive goat conservation is the prevention of intermixing. Intermixing is when two different breeds reproduce to create a hybrid breed. Anyway, this is because intermixing, even first generation intermixing, can change critical features of the British primitive goat, and these changes can take generations to reverse. Another proposed method of conservation is to promote environmental use of the British primitive goat, as this will encourage commercial breeding to increase the working population. The main proposed use is in conservation grazing, which is the use of livestock to manage land for wildlife. Goats are specifically used to remove scrub such as hawthorn, blackthorn, dogwood, gorse, and bramble from a habitat. This is a benefit to the environment as these types of scrub spread very fast, which reduces the plant diversity in a habitat. However, there is a large hurdle to jump in the implementation of goats in conservation grazing. As the biblical embodiment of gluttony, goats will eat just about anything, which leaves a potential issue for overgrazing, which can reduce the biodiversity in the environment, just like the scrub that they are introduced to control. One way to prevent this is to use a technique called rotational grazing. This works by splitting one habitat into multiple smaller ones for the goats to graze, and by periodically moving the goats from one habitat to another to prevent overgrazing. However, this system is also not perfect. There are general issues such as the cost of the initial infrastructure, such as the extra fencing required to separate the habitats, and the labour-intensive nature of the system due to the constant movement of the goats. There's also a large requirement for forward thinking and planning, which can be incredibly time consuming and reduce the overall efficiency of a company. There are also issues more closely tied to this specific scenario. The largest of said issues is that rotational grazing allows you to use less goats to cover a larger area, which is fantastic if you're the embodiment of biblical greed and you're looking to cut costs. But it's less good if you're trying to increase the populations of species. It can be a real downside. I've been trying for like 5 minutes. I have no clue how to transition into chapter 3. So, in conclusion, there isn't really any conservation efforts currently being implemented. There are organisations currently trying to prevent intermixing, yes, but as for trying to increase the overall population, there's nothing right now. There are theories and there are discussions and there are plans that may or may not end up being implemented, but there isn't actually a true blue conservation effort in place right now. Old English goats are so important to preserving British natural history. It's a breed that we forced into creation, and now we're forcing them into oblivion. Why are we not doing more to stop this? Why are we not doing more to help them? How dare we act as God and then cast our creation aside? We need to do more for our oldest breed. Do better.